The city of Viridia was a marvel of brutalist architecture and glittering automated efficiency, run with an iron fist by the Syndicate. For 8 years, Kyle had been the Syndicate's ghost, a data courier whose loyalty was as sharp and cold as the data chips he transported. His partner, Ilara, was the only other person he trusted implicitly. They were two components of a well-oiled machine, bound by shared risk and unwavering allegiance to their unseen benefactors. Their path, though lucrative, had always demanded a silence that bordered on complicity. One crisp, neon-lit night, Kyle and Ilara stood on the precipice of their largest assignment yet, delivering the Aether Chip, a device containing every citizen's financial and political weaknesses to the Syndicate's mysterious leader, the Architect. Success meant unimaginable wealth and an even deeper seat at the table of power. Their rendezvous point was an abandoned hydroelectric plant. As they navigated the humming turbines, Kyle felt the familiar heavy weight of the chip in his jacket pocket, but tonight an unfamiliar dread mixed with it. They found the contact waiting, not a Syndicate enforcer, but a lone figure in a tattered, dark cloak. The figure turned and Kyle's blood ran cold. It was Jorik, a mentor from their youth, a man they thought had perished years ago, protesting the very system they now served. Jorik was not just alive, he was the head of the fledgling resistance, his eyes burning with a desperate plea. Kyle, Ilara? Jorik's voice was a low rasp. I know what you carry. The Aether Chip doesn't want to control Viridia, he wants to break it. That chip is the kill switch for the entire city's infrastructure. It's not data, it's a weapon. I need you to give it to me. It's the only way to stop the collapse. The air instantly thickened with a conflict of allegiances. Ilara instinctively moved, her hand going to the sidearm concealed beneath her coat. He's a ghost, Kyle, a traitor. Our path is set. The price of loyalty, a test of allegiance or morality. Kyle looked at Ilara, his partner, his anchor. Their loyalty to the Syndicate had given them a life of comfort, of belonging after a childhood spent fighting for scraps. He owed her his life, and he owed the Syndicate his absolute fidelity. But he looked at Jorik, the man who had taught him what justice was, and heard the chilling truth of the Aether Chip. To continue their path was no longer just about silence, it was about mass destruction. The line between allegiance and atrocity had snapped. It's not data, Ilara, Kyle whispered, the high cost of his path suddenly crushing him. It's annihilation. This is more than loyalty to a faction, it's morality for a city. Ilara's face, usually a mask of cool resolve, contorted with betrayal and fear. If we do this, we are hunted, Kyle. There is no going back. We lose everything. The silence was the loudest sound Kyle had ever heard. The high cost wasn't just losing their comfort, it was facing a life on the run, a guaranteed death sentence, and the possible loss of the only person left in his life. But the cost of loyalty to the Syndicate was the blood of millions. With a shuddering breath, Kyle made his choice. He pulled the Aether Chip out and hurled it across the room. As Ilara screamed his name, a sound laced with despair, he tackled Jorik not to hurt him, but to hide him, just as Syndicate sirens began to wail in the distance. The delivery was missed. The betrayal was complete. Kyle and Ilara had once chosen a path of power and allegiance. Now, standing on the floor of the hydroelectric plant as the alarms blared, they realized the path had chosen them, forcing a final impossible test. Kyle had passed the test of morality, but he had failed the test of allegiance, and the price was everything he held dear. He looked at Ilara, her gun now wavering between his head and Jorik's, and knew their shared journey had ended. The high cost of his chosen path was not paid in wealth, but in the complete shattering of his world. The Lumen, masters of geothermal energy and pristine light, fought for order and clean skies. The Umbra, living in the polluted lowlands, were characterized by the state as barbaric saboteurs who coveted the sun's light. The news cycles were relentless, filled with images of Umbra attacks, small, futile strikes against the sun's impenetrable shield. Ilara, though, had begun to notice anomalies. During her nightly diagnostics, she registered energy readings that made no sense. The Umbra's alleged sabotage efforts, the intermittent power surges that crippled border defenses, originated not from the shadow side, but from within the lumen's main geothermal core, a kilometer beneath the Sun City's foundations. One damp, fog-laden night, a massive surge hit, stronger than any before. The automated defense logs flagged the source as internal anomaly, core sector delta. Driven by a terrifying suspicion, Ilara bypassed her normal route and descended into the restricted core levels, using her level 7 clearance to enter sector delta. The air here was hot, thick with the smell of ozone and damp earth. She expected to find a faulty relay or a coolant leak. Instead, she found a clandestine operation. Half a dozen figures, lumen in their pristine white suits, were manually rerouting power lines. They weren't saboteurs, they were engineers, just like her. "What in the void are you doing?" Ilara demanded, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. A man, whose face she recognized as Chief Administrator Tarek's personal aide, turned slowly. His smile was cold. "Ah, Ilara, snooping where you don't belong." "This surge, it's not the Umbra," she whispered, the realization hitting her with the force of a physical blow. "It's coming from us. You're staging the attacks." "We are providing the justification for our existence," the aide corrected, gesturing around the shimmering, pulsing heart of the city's power. "The Umbra pose no threat, Ilara. They're a collection of artists and farmers, quietly surviving. But a peaceful neighbor doesn't validate a 10 billion credit defense budget or the need for perpetual obedience. The true nature of the conflict? There isn't one. It's a secret plot to maintain control." He explained the horrifying hidden truth. The Lumen government was manufacturing the attacks, channeling power from the core to simulate border breaches, which they then blamed on the Umbra. Every citizen sacrificed, every scarcity endured, was based on a manufactured fear designed to keep the populace docile and the ruling council perpetually powerful. "This last surge," the aide continued, pulling a lever that redirected a devastating amount of raw energy, "it's the finale. It will look like the largest Umbra attack in history. The council will declare martial law and officially annex the lowlands in retaliation, taking their fertile land. A new beginning built on a perfect lie." Ilara's world shattered. She wasn't a guardian of purity. She was a cog in a machine of oppression. The Umbra were not the enemy. They were the victim, their suffering weaponized. Her hand instinctively went to her emergency plasma cutter. The wall of separation was not of defense, but of deception. And now, standing beneath the surface of her glorious city, she had to decide whether to save the lie or to face the terrifying, liberating truth. The biting wind carried the scent of ash and impending doom. For 3 cycles, the shadow blight had crept across Erthos, twisting forests into skeletal groves and draining the life from the sunstone, the crystal core that sustained the realm. The ruling council, fractured by ancient grudges, had offered only pleas and panicked retreats. The looming obstacle wasn't just the blight itself, but the crippling disunity of the free peoples. Anya, the last of the Sky Weavers, watched the sickly purple glow touch the western horizon from her solitary tower. Her magic alone could not stop it. The spell required a synergy of the 3 elemental powers: sky, stone, and tide. Her only hope lay with 2 individuals she had never met, and who, by all accounts, were mortal enemies. The first was Kale, a hermit of the Deepstone clan, whose people had been exiled centuries ago for hoarding the Earth's raw power. They were stubborn, slow to trust, and masters of geomancy, the power of the stone. The second was Lyra, the swift-tongued commodore of the Wave Sisters, whose fleet guarded the eastern seas. Her people controlled the turbulent power of the tide, but saw Kale's people as greedy, subterranean thieves. Anya sent her ethereal message, a shimmering, urgent plea carried on the wind. The fire is coming. Unite or burn. Kale met her first, not in the council halls, but in the ruined caldera of Mount Vestra. He was a figure of grim defiance, his skin scarred, his eyes sharp as flint. The Sky Weaver asks me to trust the one who drove my ancestors from the surface, he growled, the earth beneath his heavy boots trembling with his skepticism. The blight will consume your tunnels as surely as it will wither my tower, Anya replied, her voice clear despite the gale. The past is ash. The future needs your strength, not your bitterness. Lyra arrived on the next tide, disembarking from a sleek vessel onto the black sand beach. She wore armor of hammered silver, and her distrust of Kale was palpable. The Stone Eater, she spat, drawing a shimmering, water-forged blade. You expect us to stand side by side with a thief? The air was thick with tension, a hostile triad teetering on the brink of battle. Then the first wave of the blight struck. It wasn't the slow crawl they expected, but a violent surge, a monstrous shadowy tendril reaching for the Sunstone's peak. Instinct replaced hatred. Kale roared, slamming his palms onto the cracked earth. A colossal barrier of obsidian stone erupted, momentarily stalling the blight's advance. But the effort drained him. The shadow was too vast. Lyra, without a word, rushed forward. She called upon the tide, and a crashing wave of pressurized seawater slammed into the blight, carving deep into its substance. The shadow shrieked, but its main body remained intact. Anya saw the opening. While they had bought her precious seconds, she didn't join their physical fight. She looked to the sky, channeling the combined energy of their desperate defense. She wove a blinding arc of pure solar light, a devastating counterforce. The impact was cataclysmic. The light struck where the stone and tide had weakened the shadow, and the blight receded, howling, its immediate assault repelled. Kale lowered his shaking hands. Lyra sheathed her blade, her breath ragged. They looked at each other, not with hate, but with the dawning realization of their power together. The brief, desperate fight had burned away the centuries of prejudice. A Sky Weaver, a Stone Wielder, and a Tide Master, Lyra muttered, a grudging respect in her voice, an alliance forged in fire. Anya nodded, her face grim. A temporary victory. The blight is stronger than before, and the Sunstone weakens. We have bought a moment, not an age. But now we are three. The path ahead was a long, brutal campaign, but the three disparate powers, finally bound by a common, immediate enemy, had found the unity necessary to face the looming obstacles. The true battle for Erthos had just begun. Elias Thorne, a meticulous architect with a soul woven into glass and steel, had spent 7 years perfecting his pitch for the Arcadian Tower, a revolutionary, sustainable skyscraper. His reputation in the firm, Sterling & Co., was solid but unremarkable, a steady hand, never the visionary. The Arcadian Tower was his rebellion, his silent scream for recognition. For months, he'd sacrificed sleep, family dinners, and sanity, pouring every ounce of himself into the proposal's sprawling blueprints and financial models. The project was his magnum opus, a structure that defied current limitations, yet the firm's leadership viewed it as too ambitious, too risky. The final presentation was a tense, airless affair. Elias, usually composed, felt the tremor in his hands as he clicked to the final slide. Across the mahogany table sat Mr. Sterling, the firm's octogenarian founder, his face a mask of skeptical authority, flanked by the senior partners, a chorus of cautious pragmatists. Elias's voice was strong as he detailed the tower's bio-integrated systems, its zero-waste promise, and the projected long-term profits. He felt a surge of conviction. He wasn't just selling a building, he was selling a future. He finished, the silence in the room heavy and absolute. Mr. Sterling leaned forward, the creak of his chair loud in the quiet. "Mr. Thorne," he began, his voice dry and slow. "You are clearly talented, but this proposal, it's a fantasy. The capital outlay, the untested technology, it threatens the stability we've built for 50 years. The answer, regrettably, is no." The word hit Elias like a physical blow. A cold, crushing weight settled in his chest. His 7-year effort, his burning vision, extinguished in a single dismissive syllable. He stumbled out of the meeting room, the polished floor blurring beneath his feet. This wasn't just failure, it was the confirmation of his greatest fear, that he was destined to remain the steady hand, never the visionary. The corporate ladder had snapped beneath him. He spent the next week in a fog of despair, but then a low, simmering anger replaced the grief. He had failed them, but his design was sound. He realized the fatal flaw wasn't in his design, but in his choice of audience. He had sought validation from those whose eyes were fixed on the past. It was then he made his choice, the turning tide. Elias didn't resign. He took a deep breath, bundled every blueprint, every calculation, and reached out to the only person who had ever shared his radical environmental passion, Dr. Eris Thorne, his estranged twin brother and a non-profit activist. The next morning, Elias walked into Sterling & Co., not with a resignation, but with a request for a 3-month sabbatical. He would not let his dream die in a corporate boardroom. He would find someone, anyone, who believed in a zero-waste future. His failure at Sterling & Co. was not the end of his story. It was the furious, liberating moment that pushed him off the well-worn path and onto the perilous but brilliant road of true independence.